I was born in the kind of place people forget, hidden behind sugarcane fields and rusting roofs, where the nights fall heavy and the silence stays longer than it should. People in our barangay didn't dream too big. We were just trying to survive the next typhoon, the next empty plate, the next disappointment. My name is Elian. I wasn't special, not in the way heroes are in stories. I wasn't strong. I wasn't chosen. In fact, I always felt like I wasn't meant to exist at all. My nene died giving birth to me, and my father left right after, saying I was cursed. I was passed around from relative to relative, none of them wanting to keep me long. I grew up with that look from people, the one that says, "Stay away, something's wrong with that boy." But I tried not to care. I had one friend, Jonah. Jonah was the type who could make a joke even in the middle of a funeral. He lived with his Lola, a retired albulario who swore he had third sight. Whether that was true or just old age, we never figured it out. But Jonah stuck with me through everything. Even when people whispered that I brought bad luck. Even when I started to notice strange things like how I never seemed to cast a shadow when I stood under the midday sun. It started small. One day, I was walking home from school, the sun directly above me. Everyone around me had their shadows neatly below their feet. I looked down, expecting to see mine too. But there was nothing. I blinked, looked again, still nothing. I thought it was just the heat. Maybe I was dizzy, or maybe the ground was too bright. I laughed it off. But after that, the strange things got worse. Mirrors started acting weird. I'd see myself blink a second too late, or not at all. Animals avoided me. Dogs growled as I passed. Cats stared, unmoving, their eyes wide like they saw something else standing beside me. And then, the dreams. I kept waking up at exactly 3:33 a.m., drenched in sweat, unable to breathe. In the dreams, I stood in the middle of an empty road, my own shadow rising in front of me, taller, darker, with red eyes where mine should be. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks. I told Jonah, expecting him to laugh. But he didn't. He just stared at me and said, "You need to see my Lola." Lola Burring lived in a nipa house full of old jars and hanging herbs. She didn't smile when I entered, just motioned for me to sit. She burned something in a clay bowl, bitter, sharp, smoky. Then she looked at me for a long time. "You're not alone," she finally said. I wanted to ask what she meant, but my mouth felt dry. She continued, "There's something attached to you. It's not possession, it's deeper. Like your reflection is rebelling." I didn't believe her, or maybe I just didn't want to. But the next night, I saw it with my own eyes. I was walking past a puddle after a quick rain. For a moment, I glanced down and saw myself. Only my reflection smiled even though I didn't. That's when I ran. I didn't stop until I reached Jonah's house. He believed me, and that made it worse. Because if Jonah believed me, then it meant I wasn't imagining things. The next few days, things escalated. I would wake up and find muddy footprints in my room, shaped like my feet, but facing the wrong direction. Sometimes I'd hear my voice whispering my name from inside my own closet. People in the village began avoiding me more than usual. Even the tricycle drivers refused to stop for me. They said I brought something dark with me, a presence. Then came a worse part. I caught my own shadow walking away without me. It was in the late afternoon. I was in the middle of the plaza, standing near the old post office, when I noticed my shadow stretching in a different direction, towards the abandoned chapel. The sun was behind me, but instead of my shadow aligning with everyone else's, it began to slide across the ground, crawling like it had a will of its own. I froze. Jonah saw it too. He screamed my name and pulled me back, just as the shadow vanished into the chapel's cracked doors. After that, we didn't talk for hours. He looked scared, not of the shadow, but of me. "I think it's not just following you," he said that night. "I think it's trying to take your place." I didn't sleep after that. I watched the walls. I watched the corners of the room. I even watched my own feet, waiting for the moment when the darkness would peel away again. And it did, but not in the way I expected. That night, I heard someone crying outside my window. A child's voice. Soft. Sad. I looked out and saw myself, standing there, barefoot, drenched from the rain, and staring back at me. I stepped back, terrified. The thing outside smiled. Not kindly. It whispered, "You stole my life, now I'll take it back." Then it vanished. The next morning, I found claw marks on the inside of my bedroom door. And this time, even Jonah didn't know what to say. We knew we had to find out what it really was. So we went back to Lola Burring. But when we got to her house, the door was wide open. The herbs were burning unattended. And on the floor was a message, written in ash, "The shadow remembers." That was the last thing we saw before everything changed. You think your shadow is harmless, that it follows you. But sometimes it waits. Sometimes it watches. And sometimes it wants more than just to follow. After that night, nothing felt the same. Elian could still feel the eyes of his shadow, that strange version of himself, lingering in the corners of every room. Even when he stood beneath the sun, even when he lit candles at night, there was a heaviness following him, like something beneath the surface was waiting to rise. Jonah kept close, but his silence said more than words ever could. The village, too, seemed to hold its breath. Even the animals were quieter. The old mango tree near the chapel lost its leaves overnight, and whispers about curses and spirits began to spread. But the real change began the day Elian found the old trunk in the back of the house. It was buried beneath broken furniture in a dusty storage room he rarely entered. His foster aunt had died months ago, and no one had touched the place since. Inside the trunk were old letters, wrapped in cloth and tied with red thread. The paper was brittle, the handwriting familiar, his mother's. He read each one slowly, his heart pounding. "If you're reading this, Anik, it means the shadow has found you." That one line made him stop breathing. Each letter revealed pieces of the truth she never had the chance to tell him. His mother had known about the shadow. She had lived with it her entire life, and so had her father before her. It wasn't a curse they asked for. It was passed down through blood. She called it an echo of a forgotten deal. Long ago, one of their ancestors had made a pact with a creature beneath the earth, an old god, older than names. In exchange for power, protection, and prosperity, a price had to be paid every third generation. A child born in shadow, marked as the heir to the darkness. And Elian was that child. The more he read, the more his hands trembled. His mother had tried to break the cycle. That was why she left the village, why she never told anyone. But it hadn't worked, because the shadow always finds its way back. At the bottom of the trunk, wrapped in black cloth, was something small and warm, a glowing red mutia. It pulsed when he touched it, and for a second, he swore he heard a voice like a distant whisper carried by wind. Jonah, who had followed him to the room, stared wide-eyed. "That's not just a stone," he said. "That's alive." Later that night, Jonah brought Elian to someone he hadn't seen in years, an old albulario who lived near the river, just outside the village. Tata Luis. He was thin, sharp-eyed, with skin like dark leather and hair that flowed like dried vines. He didn't speak much, but when he saw the mutia in Elian's hand, his face changed. "You should not have touched that," he said coldly. Elian tried to explain, but Tata Luis shook his head. "Your mother came to me before you were born. She begged me to cut the line. I tried, but some curses are written too deep." He led them into his small hut, where dried herbs hung from the ceiling and jars of strange liquid lined the shelves. In the center was a circle drawn in chalk, filled with symbols Elian couldn't understand. Tata Luis motioned for him to sit inside. "You need to know what you are." As the old man began chanting, the candles flickered. The air grew heavy cold, and then visions came. Elian saw a forest burning, a woman screaming in a language he didn't know, a shadow crawling out of a cave, tall, formless, with glowing red eyes. Then he saw a boy, himself, but older, standing alone in the same village, but empty. He gasped and fell backward as the vision ended. Tata Luis looked at him with pity. "The being that follows you," he said, "is not your shadow. It is a spirit born from the pact your bloodline made. It takes form when the host is weak, when pain opens the door." Elian wanted to scream, to run, but something inside him, something stronger, refused. "I won't let it take me," he said. The old man nodded slowly. "Then you must learn to fight it. Not with fists, but with will, with truth." He handed Elian a small blade, carved from bone. "This," he said, "can cut through illusions, but only if your heart is clear." From that day on, training began. Every night, Elian returned to the albulario's hut. He learned chants to protect his mind, how to place salt lines and symbols that kept spirits at bay. He learned to recognize lies and dreams, to walk through memories without getting lost. But the more he trained, the more he noticed something terrifying. The shadow wasn't staying still. It was learning too. Sometimes in the middle of his lessons, Elian would feel it watching. Sometimes it copied his movements exactly, like it was mocking him. Other times, it whispered truths meant to break him. "You are nothing without me." They left you because they knew what you are. You can't fight what's already inside you. The Mucha helped, somehow. When he held it, the voices faded. The light inside it pulsed like a heartbeat, calming his thoughts. But even that wasn't enough. One night, Jonah didn't show up for their usual meeting. He didn't answer his phone. Elian rushed to his house, only to find the door open, the window shattered, and the walls covered in muddy footprints. On the floor was Jonah's backpack, ripped open, and written in ash across the wall, "Choose. Him or you." Elian fell to his knees. This wasn't just about curses anymore. It was about the people he loved, and the shadow was done waiting. The wind felt colder that night. Elian walked back from Jonah's empty house with a mutia gripped tightly in his palm. The red glow had dimmed, as if it too was afraid. He didn't want to believe what he saw. The broken windows, the muddy footprints, the ash-written message. But deep down he knew the shadow had taken Jonah. He sat on the edge of the creek where they used to hang out as kids. The water was quiet, almost still. The moon above looked pale, weak, like it was being swallowed by clouds. And in that silence, the memories returned. His mother's voice, whispering lullabies. The sound of her crying at night, thinking he couldn't hear. The way she'd vanish for days and return pale, tired, and silent. The neighbors used to say she was cursed, that she had done something terrible to deserve losing her family. But now Elian saw the truth more clearly. She hadn't abandoned him. She had tried to protect him by leaving him behind. The betrayal wasn't hers. It was the lie they told him, that she was weak, selfish, or gone. Elian wiped a tear from his cheek. The weight in his chest was too much to carry. The pain, the fear, the anger, it was all rising like smoke inside him. He wanted to scream, to destroy something. But the mutia pulsed softly, almost like it was reminding him to breathe. That night, he didn't go home. Instead, he returned to Tata Luis' hut, hoping for answers. But the old albulario wasn't there. In his place was a figure wrapped in dark cloth, its back turned to Elian, standing by the altar. "Where is he?" Elian asked, his voice cautious. The figure didn't turn. "He's safe. For now." Then it slowly faced him. It wasn't human. The eyes were completely white, glowing faintly. The mouth didn't move when it spoke. "I've been watching you," it said. "You are the last hope of a broken bloodline." Elian stepped back, gripping the mutia tighter. "What are you?" he asked. "A memory," it said. A fragment of your ancestor, Isidro, the one who made the pact. I was left behind to guide the one who would carry the final burden. Elian's breath caught. Final. The figure nodded. The curse feeds on pain. It grows stronger with each broken heart. If it takes your body, the gate opens, and the one beneath will rise. Elian shook his head. I don't understand. Why me? Because you are the first to question it, the memory replied. The first to feel the weight and refuse it. That alone gives you a chance. Before he could ask more, the figure faded into smoke, leaving behind only a faint echo. Go to the place where your mother last bled. There, the truth will wake. Elian didn't sleep. At dawn, he walked toward the old, abandoned chapel on the hill, the place his mother used to visit secretly, where the villagers claimed she once collapsed, covered in strange wounds. The air near the chapel was thick, heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. Inside, dust danced in the sunlight, and broken statues lined the walls. At the center was the altar, cracked and blackened, like it had been scorched. He stepped closer. The mutia in his hand pulsed brighter. Suddenly, the air shifted. From the shadows behind the altar, something moved. A shape thin, fast, and human. Elian raised the mutia, and its glow pushed the darkness back just enough to reveal a creature with skin like burnt bark, red eyes, and a mouth too wide for its face. It hissed and lunged. Elian didn't think. He threw salt from his pocket, something Tata Luis had taught him. The creature screeched and vanished into mist. His heart was pounding. That wasn't a shadow. That was something else. Another servant. They were watching him now, all of them, testing him. He knelt near the altar, brushing away the dust. There, beneath the stones, he found a small leather-bound book. Inside were pages written by his mother, rituals, visions, drawings of the shadow's many forms. At the back was a final page, torn and stained with dry blood. If he finds this, tell him I tried. Tell him I never stopped fighting. And tell him the shadow wasn't always evil. Once it was a guardian, until the hunger came. A guardian? Elian sat there, the world spinning around him. What if the shadow wasn't just a curse? What if it had once been meant to protect their bloodline, but something changed it? Something deeper. The hunger. That night, Elian returned to the riverbank, hoping to find Jonah's trail. Instead, he found footprints leading toward the forest. Not human. He followed them until he reached a clearing, one he had never seen before. It was surrounded by old trees, their trunks twisted unnaturally. At the center stood a figure, Jonah, but his eyes weren't right. Elian, he said, smiling, you don't have to fight it anymore. Elian stepped back. That's not you. Jonah tilted his head. I'm happier now. I see everything clearly. The shadow, it just wants to survive. It wants you to survive. Behind Jonah, the mist thickened. Shapes moved. The cultists. The servants. Then he saw it. The shadow. It stood tall now, no longer just a copy of him, but something more, a being of dark fire and shifting faces. All of them versions of him. Angry. Sad. Terrified. I can make it stop, Jonas said. Just give in. Elian felt the mutia grow cold. His knees buckled. The doubt, the pain, the guilt, it all came rushing in like a storm. His mother, his bloodline, his shadow. What if this was always meant to happen? What if resisting it only made things worse? Then he remembered something from his training. What Tata Luis said, not with fists, but with will, with truth. Elian reached into his shirt and pulled out the bone blade. He stepped forward. I'll find the truth, he whispered, even if I have to walk through fire. The shadow hissed, its form twisting violently. Jonah screamed, but Elian didn't stop. And then everything went black. The forest had changed. Elian woke up in the middle of the clearing, the sky above him painted in an unnatural red. The air smelled like burning leaves, but there was no fire. His head throbbed, and the mutia in his hand no longer glowed. It pulsed like a weak heartbeat. He stood slowly, eyes scanning the woods. Everything felt warped. The trees leaned inward as if listening. Whispers echoed through the leaves, though no wind blew. Elian, a voice real familiar. It was Jonah, but this time it truly was him. He stumbled out of the trees, blood running down his arm, eyes wide with panic. "They're coming," he said, panting. "They've opened the second seal. The cult, the shadow, it's spreading." Elian helped him up. "What do you mean, second seal?" Jonah held up a torn scroll, soaked in sweat and blood. "I heard them chanting near the old well. They used someone, a child. They fed it to the pit. The smoke turned red, and the earth cracked open." Elian clenched his jaw. His stomach turned at the image, but he couldn't afford to freeze now. "They're planning something bigger," Jonah continued. "The third seal, that's where the gate opens." Elian looked up at the sky again. The red wasn't just light, it was bleeding through reality itself. The village wasn't safe anymore. The barrier that once held the darkness back was now fading. Back at Tata Louis' hut, the ground trembled slightly under their feet. The animals had vanished. The trees wilted. Even the albulario's protective wards were flickering. Jonah collapsed onto the floor while Elian laid out everything they had: salt, bones, herbs, the scrolls, and the mutia. "We have one night," Elian whispered. "If they open that last seal," Jonah didn't answer. His eyes stared blankly at the roof. Elian sat beside him, silent for a while. "I saw my mother again," he finally said. "Not in a dream, not in a memory. I saw her soul." Jonah turned slowly. "She's trapped," Elian continued. "Half alive, half consumed. The shadow feeds on her pain. That's what fuels it." Jonah gritted his teeth. "So what? We're just fuel too." "No," Elian said, voice firmer, "with a fire that can burn it down." But despite the brave words, doubt still clawed at Elian's chest. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't chosen. He was just a boy with a cursed name, carrying the weight of a sin he never committed. And now, he had to face something ancient and merciless. That night, while Jonah rested, Elian went outside alone. The moon was full, but cracked like glass. The light shimmered in broken waves across the ground. Suddenly, the wind picked up. From the shadows of the trees, a tall figure stepped out. Not a servant, not a cultist. It was an old man with skin like dried wood, wearing a robe made of woven leaves and feathers. His eyes were bright silver. "You have come far," he said, "but the final test is not strength. It is choice." Elian blinked. "Who are you?" "I am called Alma Lickum," the man said, "guardian of balance. I served your bloodline long ago, before the pact, before the curse." Elian swallowed. "Then why didn't you stop it?" Alma Lickum's face darkened. "Because your ancestors were blind with pride. They turned power into a prison." He pointed to Elian's chest. "The mutia is not just a weapon. It is memory, the pain of those before you. If you carry it, you carry them. But if you fear it, it will consume you." Elian looked down at the glowing stone. "What do I do?" The old man stepped closer. "When the time comes, you must face the mirror," he said. "The true enemy is not the shadow, but the reflection it shows." With that, the guardian vanished like wind through tall grass. Elian stood there, heart heavy. The reflection. Could he trust what he saw? Could he even trust himself? Before dawn, he returned to the hut. Jonah was already awake, packing their tools. His eyes were serious, clearer than before. "No more running," Jonah said. "We go to the gate. Tonight." They gathered what they could and headed toward the ruined chapel, the place where the third seal was buried beneath the altar. As they walked through the forest, signs of decay surrounded them. Animals dead on the path. trees bleeding dark sap, symbols carved into bark, glowing faint red. They stopped at the foot of the hill. Above, the chapel burned with unnatural light. Black smoke rose like a tower, and they could hear chanting, deep, layered voices that didn't sound human. "We're too late," Jonah whispered. "No," Elian said. "We still have the mutia and the truth." Inside the chapel, the cultists were gathered in a circle. In the center, a body floated midair, his mother. Chains of shadow wrapped around her limbs, pulling her soul apart. The shadow loomed behind the altar, larger now, its form no longer resembling Elian, but something with horns, wings, and multiple faces. All screaming. Jonah gasped. "That thing, it's not just your shadow anymore. It's become something worse." The final transformation had begun, and Elian had seconds to act. They crept closer, hiding behind fallen statues, preparing their herbs and salt mixtures. Elian gripped the mutia tightly. The glow was bright now, burning. Suddenly, one of the cultists turned, sniffing the air. They had been sensed. The alarm was raised. The shadow roared, and a shock wave of darkness exploded across the room, knocking them to the ground. Elian coughed blood, trying to stand. The mutia flew from his hand and landed on the altar, near his mother's heart. "No," he screamed. Jonah tried to shield him as shadowlings approached from all sides, crawling along walls, their mouths open wide with crooked teeth. The chapel cracked, the ground split, and a giant sigil glowed beneath them. The gate was opening. Elian stared into the chaos, trembling. He could barely think. Everything hurt. His vision blurred. But then his mother's voice broke through the noise. "Elian, it's not over." Not yet. Her eyes, still human, still full of love, looked at him. He pushed himself up, inch by inch, toward the altar. The shadow screamed, its faces distorting. But Elian didn't stop. Jonah held off the cultists with fire, throwing every last bag of herbs and salt they had. And Elian reached for the mutia. He touched it. A blinding light surged through the room. The shadow howled. The cult scattered. His mother screamed, not in pain but in release. And then everything paused, as if the world held its breath one last time before the storm truly began. The light from the mutia slowly faded. Smoke curled around Elian's feet as he knelt by the altar, panting, heart pounding so loud it drowned the silence. The chanting had stopped. The shadow had recoiled, its massive form pulled back into the dark corner of the chapel. But it wasn't gone just watching. His mother's body now lay limp across the stones. Her eyes were closed, but her chest rose faintly. She was alive barely. Elian wanted to hold her, cry, or scream, but there was no time. Jonah rushed to his side, face bruised and bleeding, but determined. "We stopped the gate from opening," he said breathlessly. "But not for long. They're regrouping. I saw them outside." Elian nodded, though his mind was somewhere else, trapped in what he had just felt. When he touched the mutia, it wasn't just light or heat. It was a memory, 1,000 voices, layered pain, fragments of lives long buried. He saw glimpses of old rituals, secret pacts, betrayal in royal bloodlines, and something else. He saw himself, or someone who looked like him, standing beside the shadow, smiling. That image haunted him now as they escaped into the forest again, carrying his unconscious mother. The trail behind them burned with black flame, left by the cultists chasing them. They returned to the hidden shrine beneath Tata Louis' hut. The guardian Amma Lickum waited, solemn as ever. "You touched the mutia," he said, nodding. "Now you carry more than memory." Elian looked at him. "What did I see?" "Was that me?" "Amma Lickum Sigit." "It was a version of you, a possible path, one your blood once followed." "What do you mean?" The old man stared into the candle flame. Your great-grandfather was the last bearer of the Mutia. He used it to defeat the Aswang king. But not before making a deal. To spare his wife, he gave part of himself to the darkness. That peace passed down through you. Elian's hands trembled. You're saying I carry his curse? No, Amalikom replied. You carry his choice. Elian backed away. That means I'm no different from them. Jonah stepped forward. No, you've been fighting this since you were a child. You chose to protect your mother, to save people, even when no one believed in you. Amalikom no dit slowly. That is why the Mutia responded. It does not obey blood. It obeys will. But something still twisted inside Elian. That smile and the vision, it felt too real. That night, as Jonah slept and Ama-Likum meditated, Elian wandered into the woods. He found a broken shrine, long forgotten, carved with names no one spoke anymore. There, he sat, and the shadow came. Not the monstrous version, but a boy. A mirror. Same face. Same eyes. But colder. You're running, it said. I'm resisting, Elian replied. The shadow smirked. But you felt it, didn't you? The power. The warmth. The purpose. When they chanted your name. Elian shook his head. That wasn't me. It could be. I'd rather die than become you. The shadow stepped closer. Then maybe I should become you. And with that, the figure vanished, but left behind a chill that clung to Elian's bones. The next morning, Ama-Likum was gone. Only a single black feather was left in his place, pulsing with energy. Elian touched it, and a vision stabbed into his skull. A village. Fire. Screams. Jonah bound, bloodied, and the colt waiting. He gasped and fell to the floor. When he told Jonah what he saw, his friend went pale. They're not done with the seals, Jonah whispered. The final one, it's not a place. Elian met his eyes. It's a person. There was silence. Then Jonah said the words Elian feared the most. It's you. They stared at each other for a long moment, the weight of that truth pressing down on them like stone. But if I die, Elian whispered, they win. If I live, they might still use me. Jonah swallowed hard. Then we make a third choice. The two of them packed their supplies and returned to the cave beneath the broken mountain, an ancient place where the first Mutia was formed. If there was any way to forge a new destiny, it would be there. But when they arrived, someone was already waiting. Tata Luis, alive, standing, but wrong. His eyes were dark now, sunken, his skin gray and stretched. You've done well, Anik, he said. Elian froze. Tata? Tata Luis smiled, slow and unnatural. All this time, he continued, you thought you were running from your fate. But I've been guiding you, pushing you, protecting you. Not from death, but from weakness. Jonah stepped in front of Elian. What are you saying? Tata Luis raised his hand, revealing a black sigil etched into his palm. I was the first priest of the seal, and Elian was always meant to be the vessel. Elian staggered back. No, you're not just the weapon, Tata Luis said. You are the gate. The ground beneath them rumbled. Stones shifted. The air grew heavy with whispers. And in the darkness behind Tata Luis, hundreds of red eyes opened. The cult had arrived. Elian grabbed Jonah's arm. We're leaving. Now. But the entrance was already collapsing. They were surrounded. Tata Luis raised both hands. Accepted, Apo. You were born for this. But Elian screamed and raised the Mutia, channeling every bit of memory, pain, and love inside him. A wave of light exploded, knocking the cultist back. In the chaos, Jonah pulled him toward a side tunnel. They escaped. Barely. Now they hide in the ruins, wounded, hunted, broken. And the final truth hangs in the air. The last seal is not just Elian's life, but his soul. And soon, the enemy won't just try to kill him. They'll try to become him. The night felt like it would never end. Elian stood at the edge of the crumbling ruins, wind howling around him like 1,000 voices lost in time. His cloak was torn, body bruised, eyes hollow from sleepless nights, but in his hand, the mutia still pulsed, glowing red and white in turns. It responded not just to power, but to the heart behind it. Behind him, Jonah tightened the bandage on his leg. "If you go in there, there's no coming back the same." "I know," Elian said. His voice was calm, but his heart thudded painfully in his chest. "But if I don't go, there won't be anything left to come back to." In the mountain's heart, the final ritual had begun. Tata Luis, no longer the kind, laughing old man he remembered, now stood robed in black fire, surrounded by a swaying cultist humming low, unnatural chants. His eyes glowed red like coals, and a mark on his palm had spread, climbing up his neck like veins of ash. Floating above the altar was a mirror of Elian, a dark version of him, wrapped in shadow. The shadow Elian was smiling again, arms outstretched. "This is what you are," it whispered. "This is what you've always been." Elian stepped forward into the circle. The cultists parted silently, as if obeying some ancient command. Jonah tried to follow, but Elian held up a hand. "No, this I do alone." The mutia in his palm burned hotter as he crossed into the seal's center. Symbols lit up on the stone floor beneath his feet, glowing deep blue, then crimson. The altar hummed, vibrating with power. Tata Luis turned. "You've come willingly. Good. That means your heart is ready. You can fight it, or you can become it." Elian met his gaze. "You betrayed our blood, our people. I preserved us," Tata Luis snarled. "You don't understand. This world is dying. Only the old powers will survive. You are the bridge." "No," Elian said quietly. "I'm the wall." He raised the mutia, and it exploded with light. The ground shook. The altar cracked. The shadow version of Elian hissed in pain, swirling with black mist as if struggling to hold its shape. Tata Luis raised both hands and countered with a blast of dark energy, but Elian pushed forward, channeling every moment of loss, every ounce of rage and fear and love that still lived inside him. Memories surged, his mother clutching him as a baby, Jonah laughing under the trees, the village, the hunger, the silence, the screams. He wasn't just pain, he was survival. The mutia responded with a beam of pure white light, lancing through the darkness, striking the shadow Elian. But the shadow laughed. "Fool," it whispered, "the more you fight me, the more you become me." And in that moment, Elian understood the trap. It wasn't about killing the darkness. It was about letting it inside him. If he pushed too hard, with hate in his heart, he'd open the gate from within. His soul was the final lock, and his anger was the key. He hesitated. Tata Luis took advantage, blasting him backward. Elian crashed into the altar stones, dazed. Blood trickled from his mouth. The shadow approached, flickering between boy and beast. "Let me take the pain," it said softly. "Let me carry it. You're tired, Elian. You've been fighting since birth." For one terrifying moment, Elian wanted to say yes. Jonah screamed from the circle's edge, trying to run toward him. "Elian, don't listen." And then he remembered Alma Lickham's words. "You carry his choice. But you are not him." With shaking hands, Elian stood. Not to fight, to surrender. Not to the shadow, but to the truth. He let go of the hate, the pain. He accepted what he was. And the mutia changed. It pulsed with a golden light. Balanced. Complete. The shadow Elian screamed, writhing, as its form cracked apart. "No, that's not how the seal works." But the altar responded not to ancient rites, but to living will. Elian stepped forward, wrapped his fingers around the shadow's chest, and whispered, "You are not mine." And with that, the shadow shattered into dust. The ritual seal cracked. The cultists screamed as their powers broke apart. The red in their eyes vanished. Some collapsed. Others fled into the night, howling. Tata Luis stumbled back, now old and frail again. Elian, what have you done? I ended the chain, Elian said. He approached his grandfather, who now looked small and hollow. I'm sorry, Elian added softly, but you lost your way. And with one final touch of the mutia, he placed the last of the seal's energy into Tata Luis' mark, neutralizing it. The old man fell to his knees, sobbing. Elian turned. The mountain began to collapse. Jonah grabbed his arm. Come on. They ran, escaping just as the chamber behind them crumbled, burying the altar, the seal, the shadows, everything. Outside, the red moon finally faded. Morning light broke across the valley, and for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful, but just as Elian turned to speak to Jonah, he saw something. A flicker in the shadows beneath a tree. His reflection, smiling, still there, still watching. The sun had never felt this warm. Elian sat by the edge of the hill, overlooking the valley. The grass swayed gently with the wind, and birdsong filled the air again. No more red moon, no more smoke or chants, just the natural quiet of a world slowly healing. For a while, he just breathed. He hadn't realized how long he'd been holding it in. Behind him, Jonah limped closer, still bandaged, but smiling. You did it, he said softly. Elian didn't answer at first. He just kept staring at the far-off trees, where the shadow had flickered, where his shadow had smiled back at him. I don't know if it's really over, Elian said at last. I felt it break, but I still feel it, like something's watching, waiting. Jonah sat beside him. Maybe some things never leave. Maybe they just change. They sat in silence. There were no words big enough to describe what happened. Not yet. By sunset, they returned to the village. The people were cautious at first, staring, unsure whether Elian was still him. After all, rumors had already spread that he had battled spirits, that his own blood carried darkness, that he was part of the curse. But then Lolatini stepped forward, shaking as she held his face gently in her wrinkled hands. You look just like your mother, she whispered, but you carry your own light. And like a dam breaking, the rest followed. Hugs, tears, apologies, prayers. Not everyone welcomed him. Some still watched with fear in their eyes. But most understood now that he had suffered to protect them, that he had chosen them over the darkness. In the following days, Elian helped rebuild what he could. The cultist's lair was burned and sealed. The forest paths were cleansed with old rituals. The Mankukalam from the nearby Barangari visited, confirming the land was no longer cursed, though she warned that the veil between worlds had thinned. It's not gone forever, she said, handing Elian a talisman. But you are stronger now. If it comes again, you'll know. Elian thanked her, even though part of him didn't believe it was over. One night, he returned to his family's old Bahay Kubo. It had been years since he stepped inside. Dust covered everything. The floor creaked. The wooden altar still had Amma Likum's old rosary and faded photos. Elian sat cross-legged in front of it, lighting a small candle. He whispered, I know now why you left, why you hid everything. The truth had come slowly, but clearly. Amma Likum had once battled the same force. The darkness had haunted their bloodline for generations, waiting for someone strong enough or weak enough to open the seal fully. Amma had tried to break it, but failed. That's why he disappeared, to keep the danger away from the village, from Elian. And Tata Luis had tried to control it instead, to use it. It made Elian's chest ache. All that time, the people who were supposed to protect him were the same ones who broke him. But then he remembered what Jonas said. You're not just what they made you. You're what you choose now. In that moment, Elian forgave them. Not because they deserved it, but because he no longer wanted to carry the hate. He buried Alma Lickham's rosary under the bolete tree where it all began. He stood quietly, the earth cool beneath his feet, the stars blinking into view above. And just before he turned to leave, he felt it again, a presence. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt familiar. He didn't run. He simply whispered, "Thank you." Weeks passed. Jonah's leg healed slowly. The village returned to life. Kids played in the street again. The trees no longer whispered at night. One morning, Elian woke to find a letter on his doorstep. No name, no footprints, just one line written on aged paper. "The seal is broken, but the gate still exists. You are its keeper now." He folded the note and placed it inside the pouch with the mutia, now dark and quiet. Later that day, a child in the village told him of a strange dream, of shadows dancing, asking questions. Another said they heard voices behind the river, calling their name. Elian didn't panic. He smiled gently, knelt down, and told them to stay near light, that they were safe for now. He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was a guardian. But the story didn't end with light. One night, as thunder rolled in the distance, Elian saw something from his window. His shadow, moving before him. It tilted its head, then slowly matched his posture again. He didn't scream. He stepped forward and placed a hand on the wooden frame. "You're still here," he whispered. And somehow, he knew it would always be, not as a threat, but as a reminder of who he had been, of what he had overcome, and of a truth that no one escapes their darkness fully, but some learn to carry it with grace. Elian walked back into the room, the storm passing, and lay down beside the old talisman. He closed his eyes. The night whispered softly, not with fear, but with peace, and the shadows, though always present, stayed still. For now,